All right, guys, we're rolling. So today we're joined on the Low Carb Consultant podcast by Britt James, better known to her followers as Health Edit by Britt, a passionate meat-based nutrition advocate and real food coach. Britt has transformed her gut health, built lean muscle, and boosted vitality through an animal-first approach and targeted strength training, which I love, and we'll talk about that. She's a believer in ditching dogma and embracing what truly matters. Britt combines nutrition, mindset, and faith to guide others towards sustainable health. Britt, great to have you on here. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe before we jump into all the good stuff, diet, coaching, exercise, nutrition, you name it, can you give the listeners maybe just like a real brief background on yourself and how you got to this thriving point in your life?
Yes, thriving is the word, right? It's
Yeah.
it's been a journey, which I think a lot of us can relate to. The brief, I'm never brief, Max, but I'm going to do my best.
No,
I
it's okay. Take all the time you
struggled,
need.
yeah, I struggled with my weight most of my life. So I was not always the naturally thin kid. Always in sports, always active, but ate the same as my sister and my brother, and seemed to have a little bit more problems with the weight and just overall health.
Sure.
Tipping point for me was probably in my teens. I was diagnosed with PCOS at 15. And by a very smart and curious mother that I have. She did a lot of research and kind of diagnosed me herself and got me into one of the best endocrinologists at the Cleveland Clinic. And that was the first time I've ever had a doctor mention diet and nutrition when it came to making a change, especially for something like hormone health. And so I'm very grateful for these people way back in the day that kind of opened up my eyes to these things. I was always quote unquote dieting. I would say somewhat in a safe way. Luckily young, because I had my mom and my dad that were always just aware. But we only knew what we knew back then. It was a very traditional household of lower fat and low calorie everything. We had remember the 100-calorie snack pack snacks and things
Yeah.
like that in the house. And so I will say we were doing the best we had with, or best we could with what we had, right? So fast forward, my first glimpse with low carb was through a nutritionist at the Cleveland Clinic. Actually put me on a protein-sparing modified fast diet at a
Very good.
very
Very cool.
young age. And so I was fast and furious into understanding ketosis and checking my urine ketones back then. I was in my late teens, early 20s at this point. I had massive success. I was like a poster child for this program at the Cleveland Clinic. And then I lost the weight and quickly wanted to go back and I say be normal like everyone else and start eating the same stuff that I used to eat. And I gained it all back and more. And I've done that 3 times in my life. And so,
Wow.
yes, every single time it was time to get healthy. And I will say with that, all the symptoms of PCOS had reversed with my weight loss, and they all came back with the weight gain, along with the insulin resistance, the A1C, you name it, triglycerides and everything else. So here I am, fast forward, I would say 28 was the magic year that I said enough was enough. I was done with these diets and I knew it was going to need to be a lifestyle shift at that point. I found keto. Keto turned to Ketovore, turned to Carnivore, and now I say I'm maybe carnivore adjacent, and lost 90 pounds, have kept most of it off. I had a little bit of a regain in the past year that we could probably talk about. But
Sure.
overall, it's definitely lifestyle. And I feel my best when I eat this way.
Yeah, no, that's crazy to hear. So going back to maybe a little bit of the yo-yo dieting stuff there a little bit. So you were doing a lot of, and I've had Craig Emmerich on. I'm sure you know Craig Emmerich and Maria Emmerich. She's actually coming on the podcast, I think, here next month. But
Oh, good.
fantastic people, and I feel like I was talking to him about protein sparing modified fasting because I almost feel like they coined the term, but like it existed long before. I
Yeah.
think they came up with that phrasing. So you were doing some protein sparing modified fasting, but you weren't necessarily keto yet. But what would happen is you would go back to your traditional or old ways of eating, and then the weight would come back a little bit. Is that kind of what was going on?
Totally. I'm
Interesting.
queen, yeah, of all or nothing mindset. And so I was
Yeah.
sitting in there in the doctor's office with the nutritionist at the Cleveland Clinic, and they said, "So how would you describe yourself in all or nothing mindset?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Like I was proud, to
Yeah.
say that this is who I am. And you're exactly right. I didn't know of Maria Emmerich or Craig Emmerich. This was about, oh goodness, 17 years ago. And so this was quite a while. I since have all of Maria's cookbooks, by the way, right back here, and have researched them extensively. So all I knew about keto was ketones at this
Hmm.
point, because they did have me testing my ketones, and the protein sparing modified fast that they put me on, it was a temporary solution. I was monitored by doctors. I got blood work done monthly,
Mm.
and it was an aggressive weight loss for sure. I was eating very lean protein, super low fat, and virtually very, very low carb. I had some trace carbs in there too, very low calorie. So it is a traditional, but it was we'll call it a medical grade protein sparing modified fast. I've since dabbled with PSMF through Maria Emmerich and Craig's
Mm.
resources. That still does really well for me. I don't do it quite like I used to with the Cleveland Clinic. But yeah, same idea. So I was measuring ketones and everything, and I had no idea what keto was.
Yeah, that's so funny. And I definitely want to switch into, because I know you also mentioned keto, ketovore, carnivore, like all these little diet transitions, which I feel like I had a lot of the same,
Yeah.
when I used to own a gym, and then I went into the corporate world, got married, had kids, got fat. That happened to me. So 2017, 2018, I kind of went on my own journey. And I feel like it's the same for a lot of people. You start dabbling in one thing, it works, and then you try this, and you kind of make your way through the different diets, as if you want to call them that, to kind of ultimately find whatever does work for you. I was curious then, so how do you, like, what does a day in eating look like for you now? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. I'll definitely share that. It's funny though, I will say for a long time, I love to say that I'm not dogmatic because I'm not anymore. But I definitely was in the beginning, because you know what I think it is? Just by nature, humans want to belong. We want to belong to a tribe. And
I've got
so
thoughts on
I
this.
think,
I've got thoughts
right?
on this for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in the beginning, it was this low carb community and this ketogenic. And then I found carnivore for different reasons, more so food addiction, food noise, those types of things. I wasn't into the carnivore realm for chronically ill. Like I know a lot of people find it through that. And it helped me so much for my own things I was seeking, but it wasn't quite that purpose. And I went very dogmatic. My husband hates the term carnivore. And he's like a carnivore. He
Yeah.
eats like a little carb at night to make him tired, basically. But
Yeah.
he hates the dogmatic everything. He was like, please, like, you're not a carnivore. You like to eat meat. This is what we should be eating.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that I don't knock anyone who's, claims to be with this, that, or the other. But I know through coaching women of all different ages, different goals in mind, that there
Hmm.
isn't one size fits all. And I've had to learn that for myself also, humbly. And so that was sort of like the background with that. But now these days, um, let's see, what am I eating today? I had ground beef, so grass-fed ground beef with 2 eggs, and avocado, for lunch. And I'll probably do a smoothie later. I love Equip, personally, like a beef isolate.
I love
So
Equip.
not to plug
Yes.
anything. Yeah, yeah.
Not to plug anything, but I will just say, like,
Yeah.
there's only like 4 ingredients in that protein powder, and it's
I
like
know.
there's not a paragraph. It's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
checks all my boxes 100%.
Yeah, it does. So I don't do fantastic with whey and overall dairy, as sadly I've learned over time. But yeah, I'll do a protein shake later with some collagen, some colostrum, and for dinner I have a ribeye that I'll make, and sometimes a little asparagus.
Oh,
If I feel
delicious.
like a vegetable, I kind of eat seasonally. So, if something's in season, I kind of stay away from fruit and fructose. I don't seem to do great with that. But love a salad's like my cheat meal. Like a
Yeah.
Caesar salad is like one of my favorite things. I like a great steakhouse, you know? So
Yeah.
that will be sort of something but yeah, I like some, I kind of stay away from nightshades, high oxalate vegetables. And for the most part, I do pretty well with everything else. So
Very cool. No, and going back to what you were saying earlier, about being dogmatic about some of these diets, and I've had the honor to interview some pretty fantastic people, including yourself. And I think going back to what you were saying, that's what happens a lot um, with these little communities. What happens is I feel like people find something that works, right? It works, and then they become slightly religious about it,
mhm,
right?
absolutely.
And what I think, and you were talking about this earlier about women need different things, humans need different things, different people need different things. What also people need to take into consideration is, your body changes. Your body 5 years ago is not the same body you have. Like your cells turn over, you're
Yeah.
going to have different muscle mass. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of a different person than you were 5 years ago. And so what you have to be able to do, and this is kind of how I look at a lot of these low carb diets in general. This is why I, made the Low Carb Consultant handle on Instagram, is because I've tried keto, I've done carnivore, I've done intermittent fasting, I've done OMAD, I've done protein sparing modified fast. But what I found was I kind of flexed these different eating options throughout the week. And what that
Yeah.
does is it gives me a lot of sustainability, because the big thing people will say like, oh, you got to eat carnivore. And I was like, well, like you don't have to, right? Like completely understand some people have to eat that way because of like chronic disease and illness that they have, like Michaela Peterson, for instance, and Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson specifically. But some people have to eat that way because they've got chronic issues that they're dealing with, and that's just like, that's their life, that's how they have to do it. But, you can kind of flex and leverage these diets throughout the week. That kind of creates that long-term sustainability that people are looking for. But you also like can stay away from being like religious about any one specific diet, because it's like, I'm not trying to be like tied to one diet. I know I'm going to change. My interests are going to change. My hobbies are going to change. My activity, like I might want to train for like another half marathon or marathon. That's going to require a different type of energy input, right? Than I might be doing now. And I think people just got to remember that, you can leverage all these different low carb options to get the body composition that you want, but also feel the way that you want. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that. I think that's really well said. And I was really drawn to your account being the low carb consultant, because I feel like it's rare that you hear just low carb these days. Like
Hmm.
I don't know, at least maybe in the groups that I run in. But I think that you nailed it. And something that I found that makes this sustainable and very much of a lifestyle for me, which it truly is at this point, is exactly like what you said. I may arguably feel fantastic when I'm pretty strict carnivore, if I'm being honest.
True.
But
Me, same way.
yeah, from like an inflammatory standpoint, bloating, so many things. But I'm really deep into like microbiome stuff right now. And I don't know if you've looked into like Mary Ruddick, any of her work specifically, but she's like gone and lived with all these tribes and she studies the microbiome. It's really fascinating. And, our microbes and our microbiome, it's all linked to our gut health, And so,
Sure.
and it's not just our gut, our microbiome's our skin. We have a microbiome in our nose. I mean, you name it. So I think when I get into like the nerdy stuff like that, it makes me excited to sort of explore. And I've always said, even when I was coaching and stuff with my clients, is, you kind of need to have a reason why you're cutting everything out. Like, I think it became sort of like a rite of passage just to be like line diet, like as
Yeah.
strict as possible. And to your point, I've listened to Michaela Peterson numerous times where she's like, I wish I didn't have to eat this way. Like
Yeah.
I appreciate it and I do because it makes me feel a certain way. But she wishes she wasn't completely bound to unaged strip loin every single day, and she's grateful for it because it makes her feel good. But I think like you start cutting every single thing out. And then I've noticed for me personally and other people, there's sometimes some problems there that you can come to. So I feel like the goal is to get our body resilient, and to be able to
Love that.
tolerate more variety within reason. I've tried to introduce carbs and some other things too, and logic doesn't let me go far because I don't see oatmeal as a health food. and I
No,
don't know if I ever
it's
will.
porridge. It's porridge. It's
Yeah,
they fed it to the
yeah.
poor people, and you know,
Right. I mean, when you
yeah,
know too much and you've studied like ancestral health, you're kind
yeah.
of like, I think I'm good without the gluten. Even the sourdough, I respect it. I buy it for my husband. He loves sourdough bread, but I'm like, for me, it's not exactly a necessity or a health food. But I
Agree.
think that, like you said, when I'm in a cutting phase, I do really well, high protein, moderate fat, actually. And I've done therapeutic ketosis and all the above and very low carb. I keep my carbs under 15 on average, probably total. And that's like an extreme cut phase. If I'm like wanting to feel amazing, reduce inflammation within a couple days, like something like that. And then on the weekends, I increase fat and also throughout my
Mm.
cycle. I'm big about like women syncing goals to their cycle, and I coach that with my clients. And I think that that's been a huge thing that's helped me with hormonal health and just feeling good throughout the month. I suggest men look into those things too. I know my husband thinks I'm a much kinder person right before my cycle than I used to be when I'm
Yeah.
honoring it. Because women's hormones are on a monthly 30-day cycle. So there's a lot of things that we sometimes have to do differently. I don't always align with everything that they preach about that, by the way, but some of it I do.
Oh, I 100%. And my wife, she used to be a nutritional therapy practitioner. So the conversations in our house about what women need and men need, they tend to get a little spicy,
I'm
which
sure.
makes things interesting. But I would 100% agree, like, that women, in regards to hormonal health, their cycles and making sure everything's regulated. Yeah, the fasting, the one meal a day, that type of stuff, it's probably not the best for women. Men can do it. Men can
Hmm.
absolutely fast and do long-term fasting, and women can too. I think they got to be very strategic about when they do it,
I agree.
right? And like
Yes.
what time of month that they're choosing the intermittent fast or potentially going a long-term fast. But that's interesting that you say during the cycle. So during the cycle, a women's cycle, what you'll do is you'll increase the fat to make sure that the hormones, that you're
Hmm.
basically supporting the hormones in the best way possible, correct?
Definitely. The
That
biggest
makes
thing
sense.
that, yeah, it makes it so easy. And, I feel like there's a lot circulating on social media right now, too, that like women should never fast and it's terrible for you. I disagree with that. I intermittent fast pretty much every day,
Mm.
except for when I feel hungry, which is usually right before my cycle. That means my hormones are aligned and things are feeling good. So I have a friend who has a completely, she lost like 125 pounds. She's incredible, has kept it off for 7 years, and she does OMAD pretty much every single day,
Oh,
and she's
wow.
thriving.
And it just works for
So
her.
yeah, so it's like
And that goes back to
once
what we were
again,
saying earlier.
yeah,
Everyone's different.
everyone's
Yeah.
different, including men comparing to men and women comparing to women. And I've practiced fasting a ton, so I even argue at this point, I don't think my body perceives it as a stressor all the time. And I think that that's probably why I can get away with doing it. I understand leptin and all of those things, and there's a lot of debate about that. But again, I think it just depends on the person. But to your point, yes, there's this big conversation about increasing carbohydrates after, like in your luteal phase, so the last half of the cycle. And the point behind that, to my knowledge, that because I've dug into this, into any type of research, which was not much because they always studied men, by the way, for a very long time. So there's not a ton of research when it comes to women and women's hormones. But progesterone, you want to rise during the luteal phase. Progesterone hides when cortisol comes out.
Got it.
So that's why it's always been said, increase your carbs. And that's why women crave carbs. Where I think when we are craving rest, restorative workouts, you're not trying to PR during that time, more sleep. And yes, to your point, I increase fat, and I do so to take myself out of a caloric deficit, which is a stressor. So it's more importantly not even exactly what you're eating or needing carbs, for example, versus just decreasing stress and what your body perceives as stress.
Got it. And I wanted to go back to the gut health conversation we were talking about earlier, because I know in social media, you've credited like a shift more towards a meat-based diet with
Mhm.
dramatically improving your gut health and helping you to build muscle. And I want to talk about what you're doing to exercise and work out. We can get into all that stuff. But
Yeah.
what would you say through that like journey was the single most surprising change you experienced when you embraced like this particular way of eating that you're eating right now?
I have to say, um, depression and mental health that I didn't quite realize that I was dealing with.
Interesting.
And that was really wild. I've always dealt with a level of anxiety. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Luckily, I didn't need to be, not that there's anything wrong with this, but medicated or anything so forth for that. But going throughout this journey and at first, I thought it was just my weight loss, that I just felt happier. I was more confident. But it wasn't that. There was something that really lifted mentally for me, that made me, I think, see the world in almost more color is the best way that I can put that. It changed my faith and my relationship with God. I know we're going deep with it, but
No, I love
that
it.
is the most shocking thing that happened when I changed to just a more meat-based, low-carb, clean-eating diet. And interestingly, when I go off of that plan and I don't eat like I normally do, those things come back in terms of just maybe a heaviness and short fused, short tempered. I'm not quite as patient and kind as I normally am. And that's been the most wild.
Interesting. Let's stay on this because so my wife and I, we typically notice the exact same things. And I'm curious to see from your end, like, what do you think it is with regards to what you might be eating that might change the mood, the way that you feel, the way the brain works? What do you think it is?
I think it's twofold. I think, there is a lot of us are living in massive deficiency. And so I do think that it's massive deficiency of making our body and, for example, our brain and everything process the way that it's supposed to. I mean, we know that choline, for example, is really important for brain health, especially for babies' brain health too. This starts in utero, right? And even for us now, and eggs and meat, it's high in choline. And so when you look at the nutritional value of what is in meat, arguably not even grass fed, right? That you can still get these minerals and these vitamins in meat that's more bioavailable ounce for ounce than you can get from any plant food. So I think that it's massive deficiency that a lot of
Mm,
us, when I was eating this way, that really replenished. I was never good. I would dabble with supplements, but I was never good about staying consistent. And, a supplement to me now, I believe in supplements. I use them, but they're an insurance policy. They don't do much for me, or for anyone that I've ever recommended if the foundation isn't there of the nutrition. So I feel like that nutrient element, of what meat provides in the diet is so critical. And I think it changes a lot of things. And the number one thing is probably inflammation of the brain. I think people are walking around angry and upset and ready to argue with everyone. It's like, look at the division that we are dealing with, in our country. And I think that we have a very inflamed, sick population.
oh, we absolutely do. I mean, what is it now? I feel like these stats change all the time. It used to be 50% of the population's overweight, then it's 60, then it's like 65. It's like most people are overweight, type 1 diabetic, and obviously if they have all those issues, they're chronically inflamed and experiencing a bunch of other issues and conditions that they don't even know about,
Right.
because they're just walking around like a dumpster fire.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
the mental health stuff, I started digging pretty deep into Georgia Eads' work, and Chris Palmer, and they have some fascinating testimonies and of patients. I mean, everything from like your scariest of scary of schizophrenic, right? Being healed from a meat-based diet, all the way to what most of us, how many people are walking around, especially women, I will say, on antidepressants, on anti-anxiety medication. It's majority almost at this point, and that's a pretty wild thing that people are coming off of their medications. I know so many personally. And so for me, that's very telling when it's just diet and we're not even touching all the environmental toxins and everything else that I'm a big believer in as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty miraculous, I think.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And we can go down the environmental toxins route. Like quality of life is absolutely dictated, like where you live. Are you like in a city? What type of air are you breathing in? Office space around you? All those like endocrine disruptors can play a huge role in just your day-to-day life and you not even really recognizing it, you
Yeah,
know?
massive.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. And going back to the dogma thing that we were talking about earlier, because I wanted to talk about some common myths that you see that you try to squash, when you're talking with clients or you're just talking with people in general. But what's typically like one of the more common myths around animal-based carnivore that you're seeing right now in the health world that you just feel like needs to be smashed right now? Is it the cholesterol thing? Some people say it's other things. I was curious to get your 2 cents.
Oh yeah. I feel like I'm so far removed from some of that stuff because I've been like such a squasher over cholesterol for so long now. But yeah, that's a huge one. So many people, I mean, the first thing to realize is that majority of heart attack patients in the hospitals have low cholesterol. And that's been shown. And so the fact of demonizing and fearing cholesterol is wild. And I can tell you also, I'm a lean mass hyperresponder.
Oh,
So the
really?
leaner I go, oh yeah, the leaner I go, the higher my LDL goes, the lower my triglycerides go, the lower my A1C, the lower my inflammation. It's wild. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with Sean Baker at Hack Your Health last year about this. And he was like, oh, yeah, we're doing this case study. And he couldn't release anything. But him and I don't think he was a part of it, but Dave Feldman came out. Are you familiar with Dave Feldman?
Yep. Yeah.
In his work?
The author of the website, The Cholesterol Code, right?
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
so. Well, and also Fung and some of those people are a part of it too. But Dave
Yeah.
Feldman, he was a lean mass hyperresponder. So him and I believe it's Dr. Nick Norwitz, who was Harvard MD. They had that massive study of, I think it was over 1,000 participants that were lean mass hyperresponders. So meaning the leaner they got eating a animal-based, low carb, ketogenic type of diet,
Hmm.
and the higher their LDL went. And I want to say, I don't quote me, but it was a massive percentage, if not 100%, had a zero CAC scan. And
No
so what I
way.
always tell people with this, and I'll give you one better. This is some good tea. She won't mind me saying this. My mom also eats this way, and I'll tell you, she's in her late 60s. She looks unbelievable. She lost 30 pounds years ago, has reverse osteoporosis with this diet, is off all
Fantastic.
medication. Yes, and she also does OsteoStrong, which is Dr. I can't think of his name, who started it. But anyways, so strength training essentially and diet. One thing that was changing for her was her LDL. Her LDL went up. The doctor was concerned, wanted to put her on a statin. She knows better. She's not going to go on a statin. And I said, you need to keep eating the way that you're eating. And the night before your test, this is not medical advice, by the
Yeah.
way.
Sure.
So we want to just plug that,
Sure.
not medical advice. I said the night before your blood test, you need to fast, 14 hours, no more than that, and have 2 of dad's cookies before you go to bed. And do you know that she took her blood test the next day and dropped her LDL 100 points?
No way.
Have you heard about the Oreo cookie
No,
test and
no.
the
Tell
studies?
me about it. Tell me about it.
Oh boy, Dr. Norwitz did this whole case study, not case study, this whole N equals 1 experiment on himself with Oreo cookies. And so he intentionally raised his LDL, which he knows how to do with the carnivore diet, which is basically how I think he eats, like a ketogenic. And then he lowered it over the course of 30 days. And he would do the blood markers. I don't know how often he did them, but with Oreo cookies is the only thing that lowered the LDL. It's pretty fascinating.
What? That's crazy. I never heard of that.
So that's what I say about cholesterol. Cholesterol is it's the only cook in the kitchen, with that. And I think people get all up in arms. I'm way more interested in triglycerides. I'm way more interested in HDL and that ratio too,
Hmm.
of overall metabolic health. and CRP, A1C, what's your glucose doing, fasting insulin that no one ever wants to test, I think is one of the most important health markers to get checked. So yeah, cholesterol, I find irrelevant. I get nervous when I see LDL dropping too much, to be honest. It's very protective.
Interesting. And while we're on the topic of all these different, markers, cholesterol, and I know you coach a lot of people, and so we can kind of get into that as well. But at what point do you feel like for some people diet is not enough? Like when a low carb approach or a carnivore approach isn't enough. How do you know when someone, I guess, needs to go beyond just the diet and maybe incorporate exercise or something else in regards to moving the needle?
I think it's a great question, and I have two answers for it. I've worked primarily with a lot of very obese people, and very overweight. I myself have lost 90 pounds. I've worked with clients who've lost up to 200 pounds. And so with that, diet is everything. Now, and I say that because I think it's really important. And I say that for a lot of people, if you're immobile, if you are addicted to junk food, those things, we get in our head when we first start out. And I think this is pretty universal for most people when you're first starting out, just get the diet right, just get breakfast right. Like, I think that is like so critical, because what I find is people want to add in so much at once, they get overwhelmed. And then the first thing to slip when they get overwhelmed is their diet. And so conversely, in order to lose weight and sustain that weight loss and to change body composition, that diet can't slip until we've built enough muscle mass that maybe you have a little bit more flexibility there, which takes a long time, for a lot of people. Now, on the other side, when we have 25, 30 pounds to lose, or for me personally, when I was about halfway through, I lost maybe the first 30 pounds seamlessly with just diet. Then the scale starts moving as quick. So that's when I think lifestyle, when I was doing my coaching, I have different pillars of health. It was an acronym. Let's see if I can remember it. SIMPLE is what it was. And it was not just food. So it was sleep. I think sleep is so critical and something we really miss. Intermittent fasting, told you, I'm a big fan of the fasting, even for women. Let's see, movement was another one. Prioritize protein. I'm big about high protein approach. And there's different variations when it comes to that for ketogenic, but for me personally, I always coach high protein. Keto, limiting carbs, and environment. I think environment's also really critical.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the high protein approach. And it was funny, I just posted a podcast yesterday with Tanner Shuck. He's a huge fitness influencer dude, consults with clients on diet. And he was just like, yeah, man, if you just eat more protein, you will eat less calories from fat and carbs by default. You know what I mean? So I think with people, and we were talking about protein sparing modified fasting at the very beginning, especially for people who are obese or have a ton of weight to lose, just switching to higher protein can literally change the game and then move the needle until, eventually they plateau, and then they're going to make maybe another little shift or change or whatever. But just going high protein can completely change the game.
Thermogenic, right? So it's like, you're burning calories just digesting protein, which people don't even realize, and also when you have so much excess body fat, you have energy. That's energy on your body that you can use. And I really love Maria and Craig Emmerich's work about this because, going back to the Mythbusters, cholesterol is one. Another really big one is falling into the high fat.
Oh, let's talk about this.
Keto.
Let's talk about this. This is a big one. This is a big one. Yeah.
Jenny Middich is a friend of mine, and I was on her channel recently and we were talking about it, and she was like, you're going to get backlash for this. And I'm okay with it because it is a massive disservice. I have had very few clients that have been successful eating, not tracking, and eating however much fat they want. Very few. And I can tell you the ones that have been successful with that had other things going on, massive autoimmune conditions and problems. And so, I heard Vanessa Spina, ketogenic girl, she say on a podcast, and I think she worded it really great for women, especially if you are trying to heal something, a high fat ketogenic approach is probably the answer for you. And I think where people get this wrong when it comes to high fat carnivore too, there are very few people that are coaching this correctly, because maintaining ketosis, eating specifically carnivore, is very hard for a lot of people because of the protein. So you have to really learn how to have your ratios that you can maintain a state of ketosis. I know one person in the space that coaches that very well, and that's about it. And I only know because Maria talks about all the time, and other people that are going, I've had them too, coming from other groups, having gained weight and not feeling, successful at all. I get messages all the time of saying, like, I've been carnivore for 6 months. I can't get the scale to move, so discouraged. And I think we are massively overeating fat for most of us and exceeding that threshold. And when you get those, find that balance for yourself, it does become easy. You don't need a GLP-1. It's pretty seamless. But it's a personal fat threshold too. And so you got to figure out what that is.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's crazy that we're talking about this, because I was able to have on Dr. Kilt a handful of weeks ago, and one of his reels about this went absolutely crazy. And then I had Craig Emmerich on as well when we were chatting about this. But here's what's wild about what Craig was saying. He was like, especially for women who are like inactive, and again, not medical advice, but especially for women who are inactive that have weight to lose, high-fat carnivore is not the way to go. He was telling me they have hundreds of case studies of clients coming in from the high-fat carnivore space, or way of eating, I guess you could say, that are like he said he had multiple women gain weight on high-fat carnivore, blood markers, and came in like insulin resistant, right? And completely screwed up blood markers across the board, but they're just taking in too much fat. And I think what people need to realize is carbohydrates and fat are energy sources. Like, yes, if we drop the carbs, okay, then we can use fat as fuel. That's correct. But if you have too much fat coming into the diet, the body, this is what I think people need to understand. If you have too much fat coming into the body, why would your body want to tap into stored body fat as an energy source? Your body wants to use that from an evolutionary standpoint. Your body's going to use that for protection. If your body is sensing so many calories coming in from fat, why would it tap into stored body fat? It's going to use the fat that you're eating as a fuel source. You'll never tap into stored body fat, and that's why people plateau 1,000%.
Yes. And I wanted to finish that thought on Vanessa Spina, because she said if you're trying to heal something, go keto, like actual ketogenic, which again is hard. If you're trying to build something, you're trying to build a baby, pregnancy, or muscle, and AKA if you want to lose body fat, you want to build muscle, go high protein. Like those are your two options. There's a place for both of them, and you'll appreciate this. I was at Meat Stock. Okay. Are you familiar with Meat Stock? This past May, and I was in a van, which I probably am so lucky to even be in this van, but Courtney Luna is one of my good friends.
Yeah. So I think I saw a podcast with you too. You were on her podcast. I believe it was on YouTube. Yeah.
Yes,
I watched it.
Yes. Okay, cool. And so I was with Courtney, Dr.
She's coming on too. She's coming on too.
Oh, good. Courtney's the best. Such a breath of fresh air. She's so real too. So she's the best. So we're talking to Dr. Kiltz right in front of us, and Maria is in rows ahead. So this is like my personal Disneyland. I don't even care about celebrities, but these are my celebrities, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Kiltz is unbelievable. So is Maria. Yeah. But they have some differing opinions about things. Now, Dr. Kiltz's background, he's a fertility doctor, Correct. So it's like you start cutting out all the fat and losing too much weight and those types of things, that's going to affect fertility. And, and so it's a fine balance. And I go back to sometimes overall health and weight loss are two different goals. And that's hard for people to hear sometimes, but it can be true. It can be the same goal, I think, for a while. But if we're doing bikini competition, or are we optimizing fertility? There's some different things, or overall nervous system regulation. That was part of my weight gain of this past year. And that could be a different topic, but that's important. And I said to Dr. Kiltz, because that was my thing, I said, I've done the beef, butter, bacon, eggs. I was doing, the high fat carnivore. I felt good at first. And then I felt sluggish and I was gaining weight and all these things. And he was like, well, he's like, the higher protein, I could see for a period of time being really effective. And Maria popped up from the front. She was laying down because we were at this farm all day. And she was like, I heard that. And he was like, well, and they talked about it. And it was such a moment. I was like, why are we not filming this? Because it was so good. But it just gave that exact thing. What are your goals right now? And, I actually have fertility goals that I've been talking to Dr. Kiltz about. And sometimes those are two different paths, and that's also okay. But I think goes back to what are your goals? And for a lot of women that are messaging me, I'm sure that coming to you, it's weight loss. And it's all right, let's get real about this and what your body's asking for. Amino acids.
So that makes all the sense in the world. Going back to what Vanessa Spina was saying, if the game plan is health or hormones and healing, making a baby, fertility, high fat carnivore can be the way to go for sure. But if it's weight loss or in trying to build muscle mass, that's when we're going to need to have a higher protein, potentially lower fat ratio in order to get us to where we want to go on that side of things. That's what we're saying, I think. Yeah.
And I think here's where people get it wrong. Some people think you need protein sparing modified fast ratios. You don't, unless you want to lose 20 pounds in a month and a half. Well, then, yeah, you can do that. But I mean, and Craig Emmerich, I think that they've gotten so much heat about this because from the dogmatic, community, because they're, thinking that drop your fat completely. No, I get by. I lost 90 pounds having about 100 grams of fat. That's not low fat. That's daily for me. And then maintenance, what I was able to do when I built muscle mass, pop my fat up to match my protein. I was able to eat like that and get away with it with muscle mass for a long time until I start losing muscle mass. And then what happens is the gain. So I feel they very much don't preach low fat. It's moderating the fat. And that's the key.
Yeah, and just so the listeners know, that's essentially, I think you and I actually eat the same type of way, because I always ran into, I did keto for a year, I did carnivore for a year. I ran into some nasty digestive problems when the fat was too high. My stomach just didn't like bringing in so much fat at one time. I never could deal with it well. And I tried so many different things to kind of play with the fat intake at certain meals, times of day. So when I came across a lot of Ted Naiman's work, right? Yeah. I started to switch the way I look at my diet. I eat a 2-to-1 protein to fat ratio because I work out a lot. I weigh 180 pounds right now. I eat 200 grams of protein a day. And then half of that will come from carbs and fat or all fat. So it's I'll have 100 grams of fat, or I'll have 100 grams of carbs, or 50 and 50, whatever the case is. But I keep the fat moderate, the protein's high, I stay full and satiated. But I also know too, I'm lean, but I'm not crazy. I'm not walking around at 4% body fat. I'm probably walking around at 11 or 12% body fat. I have fat on my frame. So if I keep the protein high, the fat moderate, I know I'm getting enough through the diet and what is on my frame to be able to sustain whatever it is I'm trying to do, is how I feel, how I want to work out, and the body composition I'm trying to go after.
Yes. Yeah. No, nailed it. And I think from a women's perspective, I don't have and I played with this for a long time too. I don't have my protein quite that high. I don't seem to metabolize, or that's not the right word, digest it fantastic when I have massive, but I keep my protein around 125 to 150 grams. And that's a big variation, but it depends on how lean I'm eating and what I'm consuming. Just in terms of like weight loss, you know, type of goals. But on the weekends, I increase fat, or like I said before my cycle. And like for me, that keeps my hormones happy. It keeps this very sustainable. And that's even for weight loss goals. That's where it's really helped my mindset. I'm really big about the mindset factor when it comes to goals in general, but especially for weight loss, and just consistency. Is I had to have like, you know, it's like the old keto days of like a cheat, you know, like everyone's so obsessed with like the Sunday cheat meal. And then it's like, if you're insulin resistant and you don't have a lot of muscle mass, it's going to completely derail your whole week and everything you just did. And women need to hear that, because I think it's so disheartening that you're following people on social media, or these men that are, no offense, Max, but 11% body fat that are like, I can probably, you might not want to, and you might not do this, but can kind of get away with like having maybe a little cheat meal or a little splurge here and there, where a lot of women, if you're overweight and you don't have a lot of muscle mass and you're insulin resistant, I hate to tell you, you kind of can't. And that's like the really hard line. So my way around that is I increase fat. I eat pretty lean all week. I eat at home, and I have a lot of standards for myself for that. And then I can get away with having blue cheeseburgers and wings and things like that out on the weekends, or eating out with all the oils and everything. I'm not crazy dogmatic about it, but my body then kind of uses that almost like a refeed. And then I'll wake up Monday morning with a drop on the scale.
Interesting. That's cool, because going back to what you were just saying, I'll do a little bit of a refeed on Saturdays. You know, Saturday's the day where we might take the kids to go see some movies or something like that. Like I'll have the popcorn, you know, I'm not going to just sit there and like not eat anything, or my kid's going to hand me Sour Patch Kids. I'm gonna have some freaking Sour Patch Kids. I'm sorry. Like I'm at the movies, I'm gonna do it, you know, and I might have a few handfuls of it. Okay. What I look at it as like an excess energy intake day. I don't call it like a cheat day. So it's not so like, but then it's just like back on track. You know what I mean? But like I'll do, if you want to call it a refeed, sure, that's what I'll call it. I might stoke the fire with some extra calories, carbs, sugar that I wouldn't normally have. And then it typically tapers off throughout the week, and then I'm back on track. But like, and that goes back to what we were saying earlier. The whole entire point of all this stuff and all these different diets, and what I suggest people do, is try these different things, or work with someone like you. We can talk about that here in a little bit. Work with someone like you that can help you find what works the best for them, you know? Because like you said, and I feel like we've been saying the entire time, we're all different. We all need different types of nutrition strategies and people to bounce ideas off of. Speaking of clients, and I know we're coming up here on time. I'm going to do a quick time check, because I've got some rapid fire fun questions here that we're going to do before we wrap up. But in terms of maybe people that you've worked with, can you share like a client success story where, you know, someone's health drastically improved when, you know, weight loss maybe even wasn't even the main outcome? I know we were talking earlier about, I think people you've worked with that lost like a couple 100 pounds, I think you said. What is the one client success story that comes to your mind that you tell everyone about that was just wild?
And to preface too, the one that lost a couple 100 pounds worked with me with another program as well, and then me on my own. So I don't want to take all the credit for that, but
gotcha.
So impressive. But gosh, I will say there's so many. There's two. Okay. So there's one. Can I give you two?
Yes, you can.
Because I'm so proud of them and they're so impressive. And also I think it's really important to hear the ages. So I worked with one who had a very high stress job. She was divorced, had a daughter that was super successful in college. She lived in New York City, and she was a badass. Okay, so you could just tell. Her name's Irene, and Irene ended up going, and everything that Irene, I would tell her things, and she's like, "I just can't do that." I'm like, "Well, you can. I mean, but if you say you can't, you can't." Irene, you know, like we had a funny relationship. But that girl, I was a tool for her, but she finally got out of her own way. And she was, gosh, I guess in her 50s or 60s. I think 50s. She'll be so mad at me if I get that wrong. But anyway, she ended up losing. She went carnivore because she was all or nothing. She went carnivore. And she ended up, I just want everyone to understand the ripple effect here. She lost the weight, but not only that, she got off of all of her medication. She was on blood pressure medication. She was on like gastro issue medication. She was like literally in the hospital for like gastritis, like wild things, got off of all medication. On top of that, she left her job for a massive raise, and which she would have never had courage to do. And she says that, and interviewed and got this unbelievable job in New York. She started dating this like ex-athlete. They would go and like, and I just say because she would tell me these things and she's like, can you believe it? Like, can you believe that this is my life now? And I'm like, yes, I can. Because I always did believe in you. But like, that's the point. This is so much more than just weight loss. It's what I witness is people literally getting their life back when they thought it was over in many ways, not to be dark.
That's an awesome story. That's an awesome story.
She's a pretty awesome person. We are still friends. And another one, her name's Tammy. She lives in Texas and she's a good friend of mine too. Tammy lost over 90 pounds. The wild thing about her is she had this very rare, and I'm going to butcher what it is, but it's like where her trach would close up and it was scar tissue. And the only way to open it was to go in and get surgery. And she was progressively having to get this surgery. It turned out to be at the end there every 6 months that she would have to go in and get this surgically removed. It was
every
crazy.
6 months she would have to do the surgery over again?
Yes.
Oh, wow,
and it was
that's wild.
awful. And it would lead up to it and you would hear her voice change. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't catch her breath. She wasn't able to work out, all of these things. Well, she did coaching with me, and she did Dr. Boz, Annette Bosworth's fasting protocol. And between the two of those things, she lost 90 pounds. She kept it off. She got crazy active doing all of these wild kettlebell exercise workouts all the day out in Houston, Texas heat, mind you. And she was able to prolong those surgeries, I think, by almost 2 years. She still has to get it, but that's how much it took the inflammation away, where they told her that this was her new normal forever. And she's been able to prolong having to get those just through diet and lifestyle.
That's wild. So first off, that's absolutely incredible that she's had made that change in her life and she's able to prolong her surgeries. But like, just out of curiosity, is it just like a growth in her throat that grows? It's like, is it tumor or cancer related? Is that what's going on?
It's not cancer related, and I would need her to explain it and it's more of like a scar tissue type of thing that just kind of grows back. She believes due to inflammation. So inflammation. And so having the fasting, and she would do like 3-day fasts every week. I mean, she was for 8 weeks, she did that. Wow. That and eating carnivore. She did carnivore, pretty higher fat at first, and then she ended up switching to higher protein. She does well with both, honestly. And that really reduced that inflammation, where not only did it prolong it, but she could breathe again. She could work out. She was active, like traveling. I mean, completely has changed her life, which she did, and so
that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's a great story. All right. So I know we're coming up here on time and I want to be respectful of what you got going on for the rest of the day. I've got some rapid fire questions here that I thought I would ask you. So number one, what's the biggest health food lie you think people need to stop believing today?
God, there's so many, Max. So this is a good, the biggest health food lie,
the biggest health food lie you think people need to stop believing today?
I would say that carbs are essential, that we need carbs.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. If someone ditched plants tomorrow and went meat only, what's the first change they'd likely notice?
Oh, gosh. Oh, so many things. I would say bloating. They would notice that their rings would get loose and their bracelets, if they were a girl, and their stomach, their bloating would drastically change, and their digestion.
I think the digestion piece is absolutely huge, 100%. If you could ban just one food from every grocery store shelf, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is easy, Max. Seed oils. Every single thing that contains any seed oils. Imagine how wonderful that would be.
Yeah. 100%.
That's what I would do.
I,
That would wipe
I,
out enough for me to be happy, I think.
I think I agree with you on that one. Totally. What's one health hack you swear by that sounds totally crazy, but absolutely works?
Oof. Health hack. Gosh, these are kind of hard because it's like you want the perfect answer, and I have a couple with this that I swear by that totally works. Increasing fat. Eating carnivore and increasing fat the week before your cycle. You will not have PMS symptoms and you'll have a much better cycle. Women.
I'm going to remind my wife on that one.
She'll be mad at me.
All right. Last one here. You've got 3 foods. We didn't even get to the exercise stuff, and I really wanted to get into that, but I wanted to ask this last one to you. You got 3 foods to eat for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
What are they and why?
Oh, probably, honestly, it's a toss up here. It has to be red meat. I'm going to say ribeye because it's delicious, but I would go grass fed to make it a little leaner.
Mm-hmm.
Eggs because they're a superfood. I'd say that that's my multivitamin every day. And avocado because I'm not a dogmatic carnivore anymore.
Love that answer. That's awesome. How are you on time? I wanted to ask you about the exercise stuff real quick. Did you
I'm
have
good.
maybe a couple more minutes?
Yeah. That's perfect. I'm good on
Yeah, and I like to ask guests what they do for just exercise, movement, whatever it is. And I know we were talking a little bit earlier about how your day-to-day in terms of diet. What's your day-to-day in terms of working out? When do you get your movement in? What is it? Do you train? You do strength training every day? Do you incorporate cardio? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's looked a little bit different. So I had a little bit of a nervous system issue this past year. More so related to a long virus that's very familiar with everybody that we won't name.
Sure.
So you're not shadow banned. But so before that, I was strength training probably 3 to 5 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week, twice a week, typically with a trainer. It was very disciplined and I felt amazing. On top of that, I was walking or I have a Peloton. And so I would always do some type of cardio. Pretty steady state though, never intense cardio. So I've always been way more successful with building muscle mass and also with weight loss when I pulled off on the really intense cardio. So I am a non-negotiable now. I had to work through some de-stressing. My body was in fight or flight for a while. And so that was really hard because exercise is like my anchor habit. It's what makes me happy. It's my de-stressor. It's anxiety. It's so many things that it helps me with. But I had to really tone that back because my body was not able to keep up with the demands of what I was doing before. And so with that, I made a non-negotiable and I still do this. And I do a poll every single day on my Instagram. Have you moved your body? So movement for me is a non-negotiable. And, I hear so often people are like, walking's not exercise. And I would agree with that if you're in the thick of your fitness journey. But I think most of America is sedentary. And most of us are not moving our body. A lot of us have desk jobs and we're indoors and we aren't even I don't even wear a tracking device anymore personally, but we're not getting the movement in. We don't have that incentive, And so I'm a big advocate for just moving your body. I walk every single day, 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's 30 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour and a half if it's a really good podcast. And so that's my non-negotiable. With that, I do strength training now about twice a week. And so I keep it really simple. Yeah.
Very good. No, walking is absolutely fantastic. Walking after meals. My wife and I will try to take a walk right after we eat dinner, just around the block.
We do too.
Yeah, and it helps with digestion. It helps with, especially like for me, like I'll eat a lot of food, and sometimes I can get a little bit sluggish because I'll put down so much food. But it's just nice to like go, take a walk, let everything digest, and also too, I sleep better. I've noticed I sleep better too. Just that little bit of walking right after you eat.
And it's funny. I used to share this with my clients too. I worked with a range of strict carnivore to, eating 70 total carbs a day that were still counted ketogenic. So
Hmm.
wide variety of what worked for different people. And I always said that when it comes to, weight loss, especially in insulin resistance, is just learning to manage blood sugar. That's why ketogenic is so helpful. But learning about body weight squats after you eat or a walk, just like a 10-minute walk, like what you were saying, can blunt a glucose response by up to 40%. I think it's like 40 to 60%. And so, it's really helpful if you are someone that you consume or you feel good with more carbs or maybe having some carbs on the weekend, or even as we know, a lot of protein, can break down in a little gluconeogenesis action there. But doing the squats or going for a walk, along with everything else that it aids with digestion and brings blood pressure down and so many things, it can blunt that glucose response by that much, which is pretty wild.
Oh, 1,000%. For a while, what I was doing was every time after I ate, I would do, no matter what it was, I would do 30 push-ups, 30
Yeah.
squats, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
honestly, it felt better because a lot of times I was just saying, if I usually eat 2 meals a day, big lunch, big dinner, that's it. But
Yep.
it's a lot of food, but I do 30 push-ups, 30 squats afterwards. I feel like it kind of helps how I feel and helps how I digest everything. 100%. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, for sure. I am too. It's a big hack for sure.
Yeah. Well, Britt, this was fun and it was really fantastic. Where can people find you online, get in contact with you, work with you?
Yeah, I paused my coaching program for a little bit last year and I'm in the process of trying to bring it back. So I am corresponding with people. I might start a wait list here soon for that. And I'm just on Instagram. I keep it simple. I can't keep up with the kids, on all the different platforms. So Instagram, Health Edit by Britt with 2 T's at the end is where you can find me.
Very cool. And I'll put everything in the show notes. This was again amazing. Thanks so much for your time and to all you guys listening to the Low Carb Consultant podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.